Welcome back, Fragrance Fiend here today with a discovery set by Tsu Lange Yor, a fragrance brand developed by Troye Sivan and his brother in 2023. Tsu Lange Yor in Yiddish simply translates to long years. So I've been wanting to try this brand for a while. They've done pop-ups all around Australia. They recently did one in New York, and I thought he'd do one from his hometown of Perth, where I'm from, but no luck yet. So I thought I'd get the discovery set. They all do come in 50ml bottles, but I thought I'd try it before I commit to another blind buy. I have to respect him for starting his own brand opposed to just like selling his image to some brand that pops out stuff he's got nothing to do with, and so let's find out what this is all about. So I didn't really know what to expect when I was getting the samples. I assumed they would have come in like a little bit of a collection box with some imagery, but it's simply the logo with the notes on the back as well as the ingredients. All their products seem to be vegan and cruelty free. I'm going to start off with TLY 5755. Apparently this is the signature scent of the brand. So this is more so a first impression. I may do a full review eventually, but let's see how far I dig into it. So starting off with TLY 5755, the note breakdown consists of black pepper, sandalwood, vetiver in the top, with a heart of mountain pepper, shiso, amorous, and cashmeran, lastly for the base of cedarwood, buddhawood, Isoe Super, Ambroxan, Vanilla, and Cumarin. TLY 5755 is an observance of native AU fragrance and material. Warmth, spice, herbaceousness, culminating calm yet sophisticated quiet. Feels smooth, velvet, worn wooden furnishings, close heat, crisp forest, air. A little unusual to see sandalwood and vetiver in the top, so I'm expecting this to be, well, quite woody as it suggests. Let's give it a shot. I have to say the atomizer is actually quite impressive for a smaller sample. I'm actually thoroughly impressed. The top is very spicy yet creamy at the same time. The sandalwood is definitely kicking into overdrive already. You definitely get a bit of that cashmeran as well, which smooths it out. It's not too peppery, which I was a tiny bit afraid of, but it's balanced just right. And I'm already smelling that Isoe Super and Ambroxan in the base, which is giving it a lovely little lift. I actually met Troye a few years ago, and at the time he was wearing Marrakesh by Aesop, and I can't help but feel it's definitely got a tiny bit of that Aesop vibe. This would actually fit perfectly into their catalogue of scents. Super high quality, already a lot more than what I expected. Not that I doubt his creative ability, but for an Australian artist to embark on a bit of a fragrance journey, I find it quite impressive. So I'm going to let this one dry down a bit. Next up, we're going to try Pool. I can't help but love the typography and the graphic design on the front. So Pool is an effervescent, carefree accompaniment for long days and warm nights. Sunblock, GAZPACHO, cold raspberries, gently undulating with youth, ecstasy, evergreen nostalgia. The feel is shiny skin, cold gin and tonic, ocean haze. This is probably the one that I would have blind bought. It's got the most consistent note breakdown out of all of them as far as what I vibe with. In the top you have cucumber, lychee, raspberry, and Italian bergamot with a heart of tomato leaf, coriander, muguet, and cassis. Lastly with a base of ginger, capsicum, and musk. I have said before I'm not massively fond of tomato leaf, but I think the rest of the note breakdown may potentially rescue this one for me, but let's see how we go. Okay, so that smells a lot like From the Garden by Mason Margiela. And for the record, this actually came out first. Not massively fond of From the Garden. This one feels a little more lighter in contrast, which I like. Thankfully that tomato leaf is quite minimal. I'm getting a lot of that cucumber, giving it a tiny bit of a salty opening. Kind of hard to describe. Definitely that citrus, not getting any raspberry yet, but I'm gonna wait for a bit to see how this one dries down. Next up we have Luca, which is apparently Troye's own signature scent. Luca is stirring and ambrosial, labyrinthian in seduction, heartbreak, healing, balm, incense, bergamot, tenderly enveloped in savoriness. It feels faint, warm, light, heavy denim, neon light, crisp linen sheets. Anyway, hope all that made sense. Let's take a look. Out of all of them, this is actually the only one that consists of alcohol and the fragrance, the pure oil. So no other preservatives or fixatives. It seems very natural in contrast to the other two. So I'm not sure what to expect in terms of longevity for this one, but I'm very curious to smell it. It originally actually came in 25ml with different packaging, one that pops, to put it lightly. So in the top you have bergamot, black pepper, and elemi with a heart of moss, cedarwood, and clary sage, lastly with a base of ambroxan, musk, and sandalwood. Because it's a slightly woodier fragrance, I'm not going to let it interact too much with this one, so I'm just going to spray it further on my right arm. Funnily enough, this one actually smells like it does have Isoe Super and ambroxan in it. It's very uplifting, fresh, almost like something being carried through a gust of wind. Just looked over in the no breakdown again, completely forgot it did have ambroxan in it, so yeah, I'm getting a heavy hit of that already in the opening. With some very mild pepper, that cedarwood is adding a tiny bit of creaminess to that woody nature. The bergamot gives it a very uplifting, fresh impression. But this one is definitely the lightest out of all of them, so let's break them down. So a few minutes have gone by. TLY 5755 is definitely the most warmest out of all of them. Such a perfectly blended woody scent. You've got sandalwood, cedarwood, buddhawood, and vetiver. And that incredible note of amorous as well, and a bit of sweetness from the vanilla is starting to kick in, but thankfully just a hint. I would not call this a sweet fragrance. It's definitely a true woody fragrance with a hint of spice, nothing too overwhelming. I bet if I showed this one to someone who did not like spicy fragrances, that they'd probably call this their favorite one. There's just enough there to amplify the character of the woods without stealing the show. But this one definitely smells the most organic. This one actually kind of smells like a fireplace after it's been put out, maybe an hour later. You get those woods, there's no smokiness left, just a really lovely mild spice from the burn, mixing both drier and creamier elements together. I think this one is my absolute favorite. So the second one we sprayed was Pool, which I was originally slightly hesitant about due to that tomato leaf note, but it redeemed itself and that tomato leaf has faded away and it's kind of musky now. Unfortunately, I didn't get any raspberry, but I did get a hint of lychee. No real sweetness to it. It does smell a tiny bit sea salty, which I like. Overall, it's quite light and refreshing, definitely a perfect summer scent. So overall, quite light and refreshing, definitely your summer scent out of the collection. Not as much projection as I'm getting from TLY 5755, but so far good versatility in the selection. Next up, Luca. Last up we've got Luca, which I'm definitely still smelling, but it's a lot more lighter than the last two. This one's actually probably evoking the strongest response from me. It's definitely reminding me of something from my childhood, that something familiar and memorable, but I can't quite put my finger on it. I'm really loving this one, but it does kind of remind me of like Not a Perfume by Julia Has a Gun, or Molecule 02 by Eccentric Molecules, or Another 13 by La Labo, which all predominantly feature the note of amberoxan. I quite equally like them all, but I have to say that TLY is definitely my most favorite out of the lot. So if I was to rank them from my third favorite to my first, I'd probably have to put Luca at number 3. It's a DNA that is quite familiar to me. I've smelt stuff like it before, even though this is executed perfectly. It doesn't have as much character as Pool, which starts very green, but it dries down a little more fresher and fruitier. So Luca comes at a cost of 170 Australian dollars for 50ml, while Pool will cost you 210. And then we come to TLYY, which is by far the most prominent and intense one at 230 Australian dollars. Despite being the most expensive one out of all of them, it's probably the best bang for your buck in terms of performance. It seems to be lasting really well, really developing a little more intensely as it's drying down. I was a little skeptical at first, but this one's definitely taking me on a journey. And in fact, I kind of appreciate how they are priced differently. You will find a lot of brands, say like Byredo, which have all their fragrances at the same price, and you know that they don't all cost that much to produce. I like how these are priced accordingly to the ingredients used. Before, I did mention that Pool did have quite a few similarities to From the Garden by Mason Margiela, but those are beginning to separate a bit now. As for Luca, I think that one would be a brilliant layering fragrance, as it does heavily feature amberoxan. It's light enough and versatile to enhance the character of Pool, while also being woody enough to layer perfectly with TLY. If all 50ml bottles came in a bundle at a discounted rate, I'd probably end up buying that, but I may eventually commit to TLY 5755. So as it is a first impression, I don't typically rate performance until I've really tried and tested something. That being said, I already know that TLY is definitely going to be lasting a lot longer than the other two. Pool and Luca are about even at the moment, probably a few hours of longevity, and I feel that Luca is probably something that most people may go and noswinker to quite early, but one of those molecular based scents which other people will smell on you hours into the day. Anyway, that's all for today's video. Thank you so much for watching. I'll see you next time.